Hello you all, how you all doing? Just give me a second. I just need to sort out a few things technically wise. I'm supposed to be simulcasting with the Scouts this morning. Unfortunately, my pals at the Scouts haven't been back in contact with me, so I can't tell if I'm up on their website as well at the moment. So I'm going to have to try and do this while I'm live, so bear with me. Okay, how do I do this? Okay, right, I think I'm just going to have to crack on, sadly. But a massive hello to all of my friends in Scouting. As you may know, I, as well as my wife Helen, are both ambassadors for the Scouts. And it's something that we really believe in a huge amount. I want to have a massive shout out to all of those who, last week when the big night in, walked essentially to the moon, raising £300,000, which will be matched so that it will be £600,000 raised by my friends in Scouting. So amazing. And a huge thanks as well to all of those volunteers who make so many young people's lives just that much more exciting by being a part of Scouting. Who else have we got to talk to? Yes, our theme today is Woodlands. I know that I am sat with the River Thames behind me, which maybe doesn't match quite so well, but doesn't matter. We're going to be talking all about woodlands, woodland animals, so get your questions in about woodland habitats and the animals that live there. I am also going to be doing these on CBBC on something called DIY Deadly for the next 10 weeks. So if you have any questions that you'd like to throw in, then please upload them to the CBBC website as well as your videos and pictures. This weekend I'm going to be doing a Q&A on biodiversity, so if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask about biodiversity, I will be live again for that. My YouTube channel, I've been uploading loads of films dating back to when I very first started in television way back in 1998, so there's lots of stuff of me looking very, very young on there. And I have to say a huge shout out to all of the children's community nurses at CCN at amazing Stoke Hospital, particularly my sister, who I am incredibly proud of. Thank you all so much for all the work that you do. To those of you who were watching last week, you might have noticed that I missed out the answer to the questions about bird calls. The answers were dipper, osprey, and pied wagtail. So I'm really sorry about that. Big shout out to Charlie, whose birthday it is tomorrow. That's amazing. Massive thumbs up from me. Also, let's get started now, straight into our questions. So Maya, who is 9 years old, would like to know what are the most interesting and bizarre insects in British woodlands. Well, there's lots and lots of choices, but I would suggest you look up a scorpion fly, which is not a scorpion, and it sure doesn't look like a fly, but that is particularly weird. So, yeah, check one of those out. Matthew Chalice, who's 5 from Caversham, wants to know about hedgehogs and how and why they grow their spikes. So hedgehog spikes are modified hairs. You know, they're made of the same substance as our hair. They grow in the same way. Hannah Taylor, happy birthday to you. And they've just got much harder and tougher, and they're really good to be used as protection. We have Lottie Esme, it's a good Cornish name, and Maisie saying they had a confident hedgehog in their garden during the daytime for the last 2 weeks. Is it unusual to see so much of a hedgehog during the day? Quite often, a hedgehog out during the day is a sign that it is not well, that it hasn't been, that there's something wrong with it, perhaps that it's dehydrated, particularly now when we've had this unseasonal warm patch. But if it's confident, if it's moving well, then I would say keep an eye on it, and if in any doubt, contact your local wildlife refuge. Finn and Ellie Martin want to know, why do you get wild garlic and bluebells in such dense patches? That's a super question. So I would say they are a very competitive plant, or they're both competitive plants. And if they have favourable conditions, so they both sort of like that dappled light that you get in between the shade and full sunlight, they just outcompete everything else, particularly if all the conditions are right. I'd say a massive thank you to Mark Baxter, to Aidan and Ethan. Thank you so much for... Joe Wick is watching? That can't be true. If it is, then Joe, you are an absolute legend. You have most definitely got this nation moving, and thank you, sir. What else we got? Have you ever seen a sugar glider? Yes, I have. The cutest of all animals, without any doubt. Right, let's move on now to Oliver Hook, who is 8 from Mousehole in Cornwall. I'm saying that with a glint in my eye because I know that every Cornish person is going to be screaming at me that it's actually called Mousel. So massive hello to you, Oliver. And he says, do you get woodpeckers in Cornwall? Which is the perfect excuse for me to bring out again my wonderful taxidermied woodpecker, which one of my neighbours lent me, which is a thing of great beauty. This is a great spotted woodpecker, which you do get in Cornwall, as well as the greens and the lesser spotted, or those are much less likely to be seen. Finley from Bicester says that when he goes for his daily walk in the woods, he hears a woodpecker tapping away, but never sees him. Would love to. Austin, age 11 from York, would like to know if I have any tips on how to spot a woodpecker, as signs to look out for example. Well, you can see signs that they've been drilling into wood, but I would say always use their sound, always use that drumming sound as a way of trying to locate them. And something that you can do, if there's more than 3 of you, is you can all wander out to separate directions and listen for the sound and then all walk towards it. And what happens is you triangulate and you effectively come in to the epicenter of the sound, and the tree that you come to is going to be the tree that has the woodpecker in it. Works with lots and lots of other animals. So happy birthday to Ava, who is 9 on Wednesday, Annalise, who is 10 today. A massive shout out to Seb and his amazing mum Cara. You're going through tough times at the moment, and all I can say is I am really thinking of you. And of course to Jack and Tomalon. Now, Erin, who's aged 8, would like to know if rabbits have their own language to communicate between each other, and if they do, how do you actually know it's a language? Well, rabbits are not massively vocal animals, but they do have one particular cry which they use when they're in distress, and it goes a little bit like this. It's a really piercing call. It carries a long distance, and it has been used for many, many years to attract in predators by hunters, for example. They'll make that sound, and a fox or another animal that would be focused on a rabbit that's in distress will come to you. So that's a little naturalist trick that you can learn there. What have we got here? James, aged 8, and Laura, aged 40, would like to know about bats in the UK. They have bats in their garden and know nothing about them. And Luke, who's 8 from Ashford in Kent, would like to know how many different types of bats we have here in the UK. Well, we are usually said to have 18 different species of bats, with 17 of them breeding here. And one of the best things to do, particularly if you're on lockdown and you can see the bats outside your window, but you can't go out to them, is to get a bat detector. Now, once upon a time, those used to be a giant, great big box which you would focus up at the sky. Now you can just get a little itty-bitty dongle like this, which you whack onto the bottom of your tablet or your phone, and you point that at the sky, and as the bats go through, the ultrasonic calls that they're making will register on your phone with pipistrelles. It's kind of like a splatting sound. And it'll tell you the species of bats that are flying around you. You can listen to their calls, which are usually too high for us, our human ears, to hear. And then it'll pop up and tell you what species it is. It's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I would say get one of those. It's a great thing to do, a little naturalist tool that you can have and you can use even when you're on lockdown. Someone there asking what are the largest forest animals in the world. That was Joseph. Largest forest animal is going to be the forest elephant from West Africa. Here in the UK, naturally is going to be the red deer, although obviously that is much more of a heathland moorland species, but you do get them in Woodlands. Someone there, CJ Souls, asking how do you attract a fox? Well, that sound that I just made, that rabbit in distress sound, that will call in foxes. So, Megan, aged 8 from Ayrshire, would love to know whether tadpoles can survive in mud, and if so, for how long. We've seen some wriggling about in a dried up pond and wondered if they would survive. So, tadpoles, until they mature, have gills, and they really need aerated water to be able to breathe. So being in mud, they're not going to last for very long. If you get a chance, move them to a nice aerated pond. They're much, much more likely to survive. I've got Aisling there, who is 10 tomorrow. I hope I said that right. Massive happy birthday to you. And let's get some more over here on YouTube. Wow, those are racing past. There are thousands of questions coming in. This is absolutely brilliant. Okay, so let us move on now to Zach, who wants to know what the most dangerous plant is in an English woodland. And Nathan Packham, who is aged 12, who has the same question. Sam, who is 10 from Bournemouth, wants to know how you can tell what berries are safe to eat and how do birds know. Um, the simple truth is that there are no hard and fast rules. I mean, generally speaking, in nature, bright colours are a warning. It's called aposematic or aposematic coloration, and it means dangerous, leave well alone. But that's not always true. I mean, the best thing to know really is that unless you are an absolute expert, don't ever eat any plants, and particularly not any fungus out there in the wild world. Here in the UK, we have got plenty of lethally poisonous plants, even really common ones like hemlock and foxglove and monkshood and what's the other one? Belladonna. They'll come to me. But yeah, there's lots and lots of nightshade, deadly nightshade, lots of poisonous plants, but fungus can be lethal in even tiny, tiny amounts. The death cap, just a fingernail full is going to be enough to cause liver or kidney failure. So stay well away from eating anything in the wild world unless you know exactly what it is. Let's move on. Questions on YouTube. Lots and lots coming in. Someone saying they're 9 today. A shout out to Alfie and Oliver. Hello, you all. Really, really nice to make your acquaintance. Joseph Greenfield. So my dad likes to take me out on walks in the countryside and told me once that mushrooms have a massive root system. That is absolutely true. They can be vast. He also said that humans and mushrooms are close relatives. Is Dad making that up? Yes, he is. Yeah, we are very, very... I mean, we would have a common ancestor, but it's going to be hundreds of millions, if not over a billion years ago, that we had a common ancestor with mushrooms. We are not closely related to fungus. So, Sophie and Hamish, they saw a badger out in the daytime. Is this usual? And Hannah Kluwer asks, what is the most common unseen woodland animal? Well, that leads me on nicely to our cameras. Let me introduce to you, those of you who haven't seen them yet, my local badgers. So I've had cameras out on my local sets since before lockdown, and as you can see, they are now starting to come out during the daytime. This is very, very late at night that this one is actually coming out. This is just before dusk, but they are plenty active. And as anyone who was watching last week will know, our badgers have 2 young cubs. That's one of them following up behind it there. Just preposterously cute. And these 2 cubs, cute as they are, seem to spend almost all of their time fighting. So like a lot of young mammals, they are very boisterous. They're learning their skills. They're learning how to interact with their environment and with each other. And so they are just constantly battling, tearing at each other's tails, throwing each other around. It's an absolutely wonderful, wonderful sight to see. I have hundreds of videos of this now, of these 2 young badger cubs just absolutely beating the living daylights out of each other. It's a little bit like me and my sister when we were kids, actually. And yeah, this is very, very common behaviour. While the mum and dad seem to be spending most of their time off in the nearby field foraging for things like earthworms, our 2 badger cubs are pretty much just mucking about with each other. What I'd really like is, so these are twins, these 2. I don't know what sex they are. I can't work out if they're male or female, but I'd love for you to give me some suggestions of what our badger cub twins should be called. I was going to call them Kit and Willow, but that would just be way too confusing. So if you guys can come up with some possible names for our badgers, that would make me very, very happy indeed. We have, what else have we got? Ethan and Jasper, who are 11 and 9 from the Isle of Man, so they don't get badgers in the Isle of Man, so they're looking forward to seeing them. Well, I hope that was a little bit of a taster. We'll have lots more of the badgers over the following weeks. Zach, who's 9 from Dorset, says they have a badger in their woodland. Is it still okay to try and attract hedgehogs, or would they get eaten by the badgers? Well, yes, badgers do predate hedgehogs. It's not massively common, and I certainly wouldn't have that as a reason for not trying to attract the hedgehogs. Ellie, aged 9, has a question. They have some footage of badgers climbing trees in their garden. And should they be worried about a fox that they've caught on camera sniffing about the set? No, absolutely not. I mean, potentially the other way around. Look at that, some swans over my shoulder. Isn't that a glorious sight behind me there? These 2 swans, though, that you can see here, are really not in my good books. To anyone who has been following these live lessons over the last 6 weeks, you'll know that I've been trying to get these swans to nest in my back garden, and I have been feeding them as much as 4 or 5 times a day. It's been costing me a small fortune in plant food. And behind us now we have that's the male, the cob swan, and they have nested and they have laid eggs. So let me show you some shots of that now. This is where our swans have built their nest. So that's the female there, and you can see that she's pulling up her nest right there alongside that dock. She's starting to do a really good job of it, and she has already got, and this is absolutely wonderful. Obviously, really chuffed to see it. She has got 2 eggs. Yay! Amazing! Fantastic! But it's not in our garden. Traitors! Seriously, I am so cross with them. I feel like I've been totally let down by our swans. I mean, I could not have treated them better, and they've gone off and started nesting with my neighbours. And that's the girl, the female up behind me. But I'm not going to pay her any attention. I'm not talking to her anymore because I'm disappointed, to say the least. However, we have still got access to that nest, and we can film those swans as the eggs will be laid. Every other day, she will lay an egg, and then finally, when she's laid all of them, she will then sit on them and incubate. Oh wow, I've got lots and lots of birthdays and hellos. So to Elijah from Brighton, a happy 10th birthday. To Noah and Bailey, to Edward and Matthew, to Zane from Brisbane in Australia, to Matilda and Thomas in Teesside, to Charlie, who's going on a woodland walk today. Good news, Charlie, have a good one. To Ella, who's in Australia, to Laura, happy birthday, to Corin in France, to Arthur in Ballarat in Oz. I really hope that we're coming back to Ballarat in January on my tour. Just fingers crossed that it can still happen with all the things that are going on. To Jude and Sophie in Essex, Isla, who is her birthday as well. Happy birthday, Isla. To Toby and Clement in Southend-on-Sea, to Henry Woodhouse, who is going to be 8, to Luke, who it's his 11th birthday, he's in Aberdeen, and there's my male swan just cruising past there as if he hasn't done anything to offend me, which he has. To Finley, who's going to be 7 on Friday, Ellie, who is 9 today, and Lisa Barnes, who is having her 40th birthday. Well, a very happy 40th birthday to you, Lisa. So we were talking a little bit there about foxes and badgers. I think I didn't quite finish off my thought to the question about whether badgers and foxes might have negative interactions. Foxes will quite often take on badgers' sets because badgers are far superior diggers, and rabbits, you very rarely find a large badger set that doesn't have some rabbits in it. But badgers are much bigger, much heavier. Fully grown badger is 12 kilos. The biggest male fox is not going to be more than about 4 or 5, and they are nothing like strong enough to take on a badger. The other way round, it could happen. I personally haven't seen it, but I wouldn't be surprised. But how do you tell the difference? So I've got a question here from someone who is asking about, from Kaz Griffiths. How can you easily tell the difference between a fox den and a badger set? Not always easy, because as I said, quite often you will get the badger's set being taken on by the fox. A badger's set normally has a huge spoil pile outside from everything that's been dug out from the inside, and that could be rocks and gravel and sand. A fox's is much smaller, and the fox's entrance is going to be narrow like that, whereas a badger's entrance has more of a sort of sideways D shape to it. It's bigger and wider because the animal itself is wider. And if you look out for the classic black and white guard hairs, which will be not just at the set but around it, so any areas nearby where the badgers could be wandering. Charlie, aged 8, asks how long can a badger live for? Well, 5 to 8 is common, although the oldest have lived to up to 19. but most will actually die in the first year of their lives. Another massive shout out to all my friends in scouting. As you can see, I'm proudly wearing my scout necker here. I'm not sure if I am still live on the Scouts Facebook site. I'm very sorry if I'm not, but even so, a huge thank you to all the volunteers who do so much for scouting. You know, you are making massive changes to so many young people's lives. Oh, someone's saying, how's about badger names? How about Dib and Dob to go with the scout theme? Leslie, that's a wonderful idea. I like it. That's really good. A huge shout out to Harry, Luke, Alfie, and Oliver who are watching in China. Amazing. Well, it's very, very nice to hear from you guys. So Fabio, who is from Italy, and he is 8 years old this week. Hello, Fabio. Would like to know the maximum amount of antlers you've ever seen on a deer. In terms of how many antlers I've seen, Fabio, I mean, you only ever see 2 actual antlers because that is an antler. And an antler is a true bone which is regrown each year. Most species, it only occurs on the male, or it's much bigger on the male and smaller on the female. If you mean the points or the tines, well, those increase each year every time they are shed and then regrown. So an older, more mature animal will have more tines and more complex aspects to their antlers. But that is an antler, and deer have 2. In terms of the very biggest, the biggest that I've seen have been on adult moose in America. But the biggest that ever occurred that we know of were from the Irish elk, which is now extinct, and those were absolutely vast. I've got a nice question that's come in, which is asking about... Million Oliver would like to know which bird of prey makes a crying sound when in flight. Well, we have a bird of prey in this country. In fact, it's one of our most common birds of prey that does make a crying sound in flight, and it sounds like this. Can you hear that? So that's the call of a buzzard. The call of a buzzard on the wing, as I said, very clear. And someone saying my badgers should be called Buddy and Backshaw. I like that. That's a good shout. Honey and Stripes, also very good. So that is a buzzard on the wing, making that mewing call, which is quite crying-like. But there's one that I had to play you here because there is a bird in America. It's called the red-tailed hawk, and its call is like this. Now, whether you've seen this bird before or not, I can pretty much guarantee that you've heard that call, because that call is used by everyone in Hollywood whenever they are putting the sound over a bird of prey. So if you're watching a Western, you're watching one of those old cowboy films, and you see a bald eagle sitting on a post, it will be doing that, even though bald eagles most definitely don't make a sound like that. But because it's such an evocative, crying call, the red-tailed hawk always gets used for its sounds. So we have Aaron Primary, Year 4. They're doing Welsh Woodlands and Wildlife, and they want to know what they should feed their blackbirds. Well, I mean, generally speaking, this time of year, you shouldn't really need to give any supplementary food to blackbirds. You know, they're really, really good at feeding down on the ground for things like worms. You could put down mealworms, I guess, if you wanted to. But I would probably focus on the feeders for things like finches, so using Niger seeds and things like that should be really good for your goldfinches, your greenfinches. Where do birds go in a tornado? Oliver Davis. Well, either they hide or they go up and up and up. Liam saying Barry and Bonnie would be good names for our badgers. They'd be amazing names. Buster and Bono or Bobby from Sam Harris. I love it. That is absolutely fantastic. Astrid, age 10 from Brighton. What snakes do we have here in England? Well, we have the adder, which is a viper. We have the grass snake. And in some places in the south, we have the smooth snake, which is much more uncommon. Much Thanos and Titan as names for our badgers. I absolutely love that. That is brilliant. That's from Iron Melly. Wow, that is a strong name. It's Thanos and Titan. I love it. Wow, that's absolutely brilliant. We've got Bilbo and Frodo after the Hobbits from Lord of the Rings. Grant Jenkins. I like it. That's really good. The Little Fluffer asks, can you keep a squirrel as a pet? I would not try it. A grey squirrel can be one of the most destructive. In fact, my aunt had a grey squirrel fall down her chimney when I was a kid, and it shredded her living room, destroyed absolutely everything. So I would say no. Someone says call the badger bronze. There's two of them. There's two of them. I suppose you could call them bronze and silver. That would probably work. What else have we got? Harrison, age 11 from Essex, wants to know what's the most dangerous woodland animal. I guess the tick. We're getting an increase in ticks in this country that carry things like Lyme disease, which obviously is can be very dangerous. So yes, I would probably go for that. Max Siep from Lobertal in Australia, talking about woodlands in the UK. But can you please explain about how the bush can regenerate after the bushfires? Well, yes, of course. So many of my friends in Australia had a horrific time earlier this year with the bushfires. Now, this is something which is very, very difficult. Regeneration in woodland can be very, very slow after bushfires. But I've done a lot of work with indigenous peoples in Australia who actually will use fire as a way of encouraging regrowth in their woodlands. And there are certain trees that will only germinate when the heat of the fire has affected and broken open their seeds. That is not to say that what's happened in Australia hasn't been absolutely devastating. But in some cases, it can clear away scrub below the trees. It can race through things like paper barks, leaving the trees themselves relatively unscathed. So, nature will regenerate. It will be slow, but there will be eventually regeneration. Finn Lee, who's age 4, would like to know what tree has the largest leaf. Well, that is the raffia palm, which can have a leaf that could be 20 meters long, believe it or not, which is absolutely huge. I just quickly wanted to share with you. So we've got lots and lots of birds flying over my head right now. I've told you about the swans, which are on a nest just across the river from me right now. These are my shots. Our herons are well ahead in their breeding. So these are my rather rubbishy shots shot on my long lens of the herons with the youngsters already standing up in the nest and fledging. What I realised was, though, that I've been working in natural history for 20 years, and I know lots of people who are really, really good at camera work. So rather than just showing you my rubbish shots, I thought I'd show you some from a very talented young cameraman called Will Nichols, who I've been working with for a few years now. And he has sent in these much, much better shots of herons fledging. Which are remarkable. They look like little velociraptors. And the most amazing thing right now is how far ahead of the game these herons are. So my herons right now, even though we are kind of towards the end of April, the first batch of youngsters are already flying. They're already on the wing, which is, it's really, really early compared to most of the other birds that are around right now. Have you got some more shout outs there?
I've got some shout outs, and I've got a load of badger names as well.
Oh, lots and lots of badger names coming in. Thank you all very much. I'm glad that you have you've embraced that.
So I've got a shout out.
So, happy birthday to Lucas, to Leon, to Theo, to Teddy, who was 7 yesterday, to Finn, hello, to Finn and Kelt, to Great Binfield Scouts, hello you all, to Joe, who's going to be 11 on Monday, to Emma and Quinn in Sydney, Max and Elsa in Bath, Freddie in Leicester, Nathaniel and Matilda, Millie and Zach, that's from Grandma, to Dominic, it's his 10th birthday today, Rachel, it's her 9th birthday, Bo, his 9th birthday, and Charlie, also his 9th birthday. And, oh, this is lovely. So Becky has suggested for our badgers, Wind and Willow. And the reason that I love that so much is that Wind in the Willows was written about a mile up the river from here. His house was just on the river here. And so that's lovely. I really like that. That's actually top of my list so far. William says Oak and Willow, which are another couple of good natural history names. Baby and Junior from Sarah, like that. Stay and Home from Lucy. That's really good. I suppose you could have Lock and Down as well, would also be pretty appropriate. And Sagu and Boggy from Lisa, plus Fred and Dave from Catherine. Really good. And oh my goodness, we have lots and lots of names. So Honey and Bumble, Nasha and Basher, Burley and Gilbert, Lulu and Steve, Rob and Steve, River and Woody, Noah and William, Joe and Barney, Crash and Bandit, Bubble and Trouble, Ant and Deck. Do you know what? I'm gonna give a little bit more thought to that, and I'm gonna announce it in next week's Q&A because there are so many possibles. Let's do a few more questions though. Lauren, age 6 from Wokingham, would like to know what is the difference between sea and freshwater otters. Well, the otters that you see at the sea here in this country are exactly the same as the ones you get in freshwater environments. They're mostly on the west coast of Scotland. However, there is a totally different species which is found around the North Pacific. That is the sea otter. It's one of the largest of its kind, the largest mustelids or animals in the weasel family. Those can get to be as long as I am tall, and that is a totally different species which never goes into fresh water. Someone else asking, can you keep a badger as a set? Absolutely, definitely not. Ryan Boise says yin and yang. Little Fluffer says Jack and Jill. Those are both all names for our badgers. Can I shout out my best friend Lola? She is very kind, from Ruby. Hello, Lola. Thank you very much for being so kind. Billy, it's his birthday on Friday. Happy birthday to you. Thor and Loki, two names for our badgers, which is brilliant. AMC, why can all birds fly? They can't. The ratites are a group of birds, ostriches, rheas, cassowaries, kiwis, which cannot. Jemima and Daphne Jackson would like to know what is the tallest native tree in the UK. Well, I can answer that very personally because I spent a night in the tallest broadleaf tree here in this country. It was a London plane, which is down near Bath, in a public school near Bath, and it's absolutely huge. I slept up in the top of that tree in a hammock overnight while my crew, there's a cormorant about to fly past behind me, look at that. Cormorant, those are doing really, really well on the river at the moment. In fact, it's landed right behind me. You might even start fishing as we're talking here. Yeah, my crew, while I was sleeping in the top of the country's tallest broadleaf tree, had a barbecue down below, so I could smell the food wafting up to me while I lay there in my hammock suffering. They were not my favourite people in the world by the end of that. JB Peg asks, what's your favourite woodland animal? Oh no, sorry, that's from Hector, who's 9. My favourite woodland animal here in the UK, I am loving watching the badgers. They're so exciting to watch. They do so much. We've got Daniel Barber, age 12. What's the difference between a snake and a slow worm? Slow worms are actually lizards that don't have legs, and if you look at them closely, you'll notice that they will eventually blink because they have eyelashes. They have eyelids, which snakes do not have. A few more coming in for Thor and Loki, actually, which is pretty good. I like that. What else have we got? Lots and lots of things, both on YouTube and Facebook. Huge amounts of potential names for our badgers. Let me also share with you some foxes as well, because we've been talking quite a lot about foxes, and I've been seeing lots and lots of foxes on my camera traps, and they are actually uniquely beautiful animals. So they're very driven by scent. You can see its eyes glinting there because this is early in the day, and I've got some beautiful shots from my good friend Matt Moran, who is a sensational wildlife camera person, who has captured these images in an allotment in North London, which is just wonderful to see these foxes, so often misunderstood, but so utterly beautiful. And what I particularly love about this shot is seeing those ears moving around like little satellite dishes, listening for the food around it. Now, I don't know if they're going to pop into shot, but there's 2 cormorants now sat right next to me, and they are hunting as I speak. Another couple of birds that are actually doing really, really well on our patch, just across the way here where those herons are nesting. There are also at least a dozen cormorants. Someone asking there, how long can cormorants swim underwater? Well, a long way. Actually, I was diving in this country in a quarry. I was 30 meters below the surface and saw this dark shape swim down alongside me, and it was a cormorant, and I was like 30 meters underwater. So yes, they can certainly they can go down for a very, very long way. So are there any toxic freshwater animals in the UK? That's from Rebecca Endicott. Yes, there are lots and lots. Water boatmen, for example, are a true bug. They have a beak called a rostrum, which they can use to inject their toxic saliva, their venom, and that can actually give you a bit of a nip. So yes, we do have toxic creatures in our woodland. Glenn from New Zealand wants to Simon from New Zealand wants to shout out his cub leader, Glenn. Massive shout out to you, Glenn, and to everybody else who is doing such a good job in scouting. Jack and Grace Amos say, Bramble and Daffodil. Those would be two good names for our badgers. Let's see if we've got any more woodland questions before we move on. So I have been talking about woodlands here today. Next week, obviously, I'd like to have a different habitat or a different theme. Doesn't necessarily have to be a habitat specifically. If you've got anything particularly that you would like me to theme my wildlife Q&A on next week, then get in touch. Get in touch on one of my my social media channels. I'll go through as many of them as I possibly can, and we'll come up with the most popular topic for next week. What else have we got? Badgers could be Yoda and Darth Vader. Hannah wants to shout out her best friends Finley and Xander. Fish and chips. That's not bad. That's not bad. What else have we got? Have we got any more? Anyone else got any more woodland questions that they'd like to ask? I'm just zooming through on YouTube, and what's that one there? Someone's saying, "What's the best bird feeder to use so that the squirrels don't pinch it?" Well, best of luck with that. As far as I know, even the ones that are potentially supposed to be squirrel proof, absolutely can't keep the squirrels out. They are so effective at getting into just about everything. One last thing that I'd like to share with you from my patch, that we had high drama here in the middle of the week because one of my neighbours got in touch to say that this had rocked up in her garden. It's as many as 30,000 bees in this swarm. They settled in a tree for about 2 days, I think. And when they finally left, the sound of them flying away was like some kind of B-52 bomber flying past. It was absolutely incredible. Okay, I have a mallard turning up behind me. I think he's telling me that it's time for me to sign off. I realise that I've gone past my normal time slot. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for all of your suggestions on badger names. They are absolutely brilliant. I will make sure that we have named our badgers by this time next week. Let me know what you'd like to have as our theme for next week. And I want to repeat all of my massive thank yous. So to my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, who are both working for the NHS in ICU, thank you so much for all you're doing. To my sister and to all of the other community nurses who are working at amazing Stoke Hospital, for all the incredible things you're doing for the kids there who are suffering from cancer. To all my friends in Scouting, thank you so much for the simulcast and for having me as an ambassador for all you do for young people. I'm so proud to be a part of Scouts and Scouting. And yes, I will see you all this time next week. This is Stevie B signing out.